Hello, citizens of Post-Apocalyptia. This is SkyBored, who has nothing going on for the rest of the night, and Needle is out doing, being part of a couple things, and both of the old world guys are asleep and stuff. So I thought I would just start up a live stream of my own because why not? Because the untypical thingy was when I was out of town, so I had no control over what was going to go on there. Hello, chat, Lord Admiral Argyle Trench and Agent MLP 412. So, yeah, this is just whatever. SkyBored is bored on a Friday night podcast, and anyone else who might still be awake over in Euro whatever land. Is the yeah, it's been a pretty crazy couple of months. You see, the last few years, my winter has usually been an opportunity to actually get like crap done. The January and February are usually my time where I can like get bulk stuff done. I don't know why. Maybe it's like a winter thing of you're stuck inside, so you're not much else to do but like production stuff. But it's been busy. I guess now that I'm like fully settled in back here again in Sacktown, I actually have a life again, which is pretty crazy. Like reconnecting with old college friends and going to parties and stuff. It's a little bit strange not using horse fandom to keep the suicide at bay, but it works out. I'm actually meeting new people again. Yeah, I know. It's been a while since I've done a mono podcast. The New Year's Eve was a fun one. It was actually funny. I was just thinking back the other day to the very first mono podcast thing that was put on the channel almost a year ago at this point now, and it was essentially me talking about game soundtracks and all the little nuances. So why don't we talk about that for a little bit, just because it's been on my mind again. So Halo 3 ODST is a hidden gem in the Halo discography universe, which I feel like gets very underappreciated, just as much as the game. Although I think the soundtrack is of higher relative quality than the game itself, and it's really a like gem of a thing to just like to listen to when you're bored. It's got a great like sort of rain effects, and we're actually getting a little bit of rain and storms here in the normally dry climate. So that's been kind of like moody, and whenever I've been driving on the road, it's got a very noir quality to it. It's very much sort of that's the sort of mood that you're going through the city and doing like kind of Halo stuff. This is mainly a reference for the Facebook page. If you aren't following us on Facebook yet, you really should, because that's where we have a lot of fun. And yeah, it just really sets the atmosphere. Like I remember anytime there's storms, I always love listening to moody music like that. But even on top of that, for riding especially, it's really good mood music for getting deep scenes across, and it kind of makes you wonder what I could be riding to be listening to Halo 3 ODST soundtrack. So it's fun stuff coming together again. But yeah, it's production has so many hang-ups. We're really pushing forward with a lot of stuff now, and obviously I know it's been a while for Confessions. Here's what I must be understood regarding Confession scheduling, is that during the horrible interim of episode 4, when I lost my entire main cast, and so 6 months of work got like chucked out the window, in the process of recasting them, I had free time, so I was still writing. And so essentially that's how the Ranger and Ice Mare scripts got done during that time frame. I think God, I think the Ice Mare script was done before... When was it? I think that was done before the release of The Ranger, too. So, essentially, it was because of that backup that those were able to come out in relative quick succession. But 7 is almost done, I swear. It's so close. I basically, like, I think I mentioned it on the other podcast where I got, like, cornholed on a story point that I had to resolve in Act 2 of Episode 7. And I feel like I have now. I think it works now. Again, I was listening through the last 3, 4, 5, and 6, and just seeing how the stories unfolded, and like it's kind of the mechanics, you know, the things you don't really think about in a story, but what do matter for if a story is good or not. You know, that the proper build-ups and payoffs are all in place, that the right characters and explanatory motivations are in place. It's really like weird. It's almost like you don't think of them like directly. It's sort of the stuff you have to figure out as you're writing and practicing, and then it sort of comes second nature in the general sense. But I think it's good now. So now essentially I'm putting all this energy into really making sure that the finale is really solid and fun and, you know, everything. So that should be out at some point. I still have all of the auditions from like August of last year, and I will listen through them and consider them, I swear. So we'll go through that and then cast and yeah, go from there. What else? Yeah, so that's fun. Part of my delay too there was then I took essentially 2 months off and got the Terminal Secrets 5 script done for James, so he could keep that boat a-rolling, because I think in some ways James wants to get Terminal Secrets done with. Terminal Secrets was just a problem child from the start, and he's putting a ton of work into Episode 6 as well. So essentially the 5, you know, rolling off the cart is supposed to get done, so then the big Episode 6 finale, you know, is going to be James's final masterpiece for that, so that should be fun. Beyond Two Souls has a good soundtrack. I will have to check that out then. I pull in video game soundtracks wherever I can, like really interesting things. Like, for instance, I was just re-listening through Grim Fandango soundtrack again. I didn't actually play the game when I was growing up, but I discovered it later on, and that has a really fun soundtrack. That is very kind of classically noir. It's noir, and then the you know, the Day of the Dead, you know, all that stuff mixed in. Which is really funny because now it's like there's tons of those movies out now with the Coco and all these other things. So I know a lot more about Dia de los Muertos than I even was used to growing up in California. So it's interesting. You don't think about like some of the origins of like monster concepts and stuff until you really dive into it. I remember when Ruby Season 4 came out, and there was the whole there's the, what do they call it, the Knuckle-Lavy thing. My first impression was that it was some kind of like Japanese like monster thing, you know, from Shinto mythology or whatever. But then it turned out in the behind the scenes it was some kind of like Scottish folklore, and so I thought that was kind of interesting. You don't think about some of the monsters that really are out there, but there's a lot of stories people tell. I mean, you know, even most of modern culture and sort of the Latin influenced civilization. You think of things like narcissism. It's like, well, what is this word narcissism? It comes from one of the Greek/Roman myths of Narcissus or whatever, where he was like stares into a lake because he thinks he's beautiful, and then he like essentially starves to death or like falls in the lake or something like that. So it's funny where some of the you know, those creation myths essentially come from, and of course there's all the Bible stories that have permeated culture and stuff. I think I've even mentioned I forget where, but sort of the very classical Job story, which is some scholars argue is actually one of the oldest books in the Bible, even though it's not like chronological. Like Jesus comes down with like a freaking ballpoint pen or something. And there were other myths too, in like was it Babylon or Sumer or whatever, about essentially it was the noble soul, the guy who's put through all these trials. Those grew up in Job has like everything. He's got like a big lot and wife and all this stuff, and they all die or get sick, and he gets sick, and it all falls apart. But he holds on to like this last shred of faith and hope, and so then like it's really interesting the way the book unfolds, because it is sort of like it's sort of like God and Satan like toying around with him, essentially, like making bets, like, oh, he's not gonna break, no, he's gonna break, and then he doesn't break, and so God's like, okay, I won this round, and then he gives Job a new hot like trophy wife or whatever, and like double the lands and a whole bunch of new kids, and there you go. So anyway, so my point is that sort of that influence, though, like the incorruptible soul, that was part of my influence for Green Shift. The idea that even though the body rots, that like the soul, the goodness of the ponies, the horse people in Stable 76 was enough to go on. That they sort of, I guess, deserved or like earned their eternity. So it's interesting. And also, of course, then it was a new lease on life for Tulip Blossom, which is another thing I don't think too many people pick up on, but not directly anyway, but actually a lot of the like secondary or side characters in Confessions are actually like, they actually usually have a stronger arc or like more emotion put into it. And I don't necessarily do that on purpose. I think it's sort of like a mirroring thing where, of course, the format of Confessions is that you have the protagonist narrating like first person, first horse, their own story. So their like main lover or whatever is sort of the arc that they're witnessing or going through. So you have characters like Carmina, who has a similar arc to Sandstone, for instance, or Amber Horn's parents. Well, they have a much bigger arc from, when he starts out enslaved and all that. But yeah, and I feel like some of those are actually really interesting, and so they come across better as influencing the main protagonist arc too. It's sort of this is really, really hobbled, like obviously I'm only working on like half power today. It's been a really weird week for me. I've been tired, but yeah, my point is that like the depth of the arcs like influence each other, almost like an earthquake like folding the earth, and you get like a lot of mountain ranges like California. So that's a really, really bad analogy that I took 20 seconds to think of. So how are you doing, chat? We have like half chat today, probably because of this weird time that we're broadcasting, and it's a Friday night, so most of you are probably out doing fun things. I was sort of sick yesterday. I was homesick, and so I got some writing done. Like I said, I'm getting close, and then I'm really busy tomorrow. Actually, I have like a whole bunch of stuff going on with just family stuff and work stuff. So that's, yeah. So I guess I'm just like taking it chill tonight. Yeah. So hopefully this isn't too boring. It gets deleted after the fact. What else is there to talk about? I haven't been like paying too much attention to the world the last couple of weeks. It's been a weird thing going on. I really need to catch up on the season also. Now that it's like, I think almost over or whatever, and then season 8's going to start off with the new characters and everything. It does kind of feel like a bookend. It's starting to feel like the end of an era, and yeah, I don't know. We might be nearing the end of like conventional pony. So I have confessions question mark in the chat. Was just listening to the playlist of the music. Oh yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. Oh, I could mention that. Yeah. So I think most people understood because I put this giant ass freaking explanation in the description block. But yeah, I've won when we moved. So when we broke off and made EAST Corp, it was like we kind of. This was my real thoughts at the time. Was I was really hoping that once we left, they would get enough gumption together and finish one episode. The one episode that we had, like, put four freaking years in or whatnot. But that was really my hope. And that was another reason I was, like, sort of leaving the soundtrack album there. Like, we recopied over most of the, like, individual songs that were more or less standalone or more specifically tied in with, like, the side stories. Like, you know, every story must come to an end was always the Confessions theme from the start. So that was always, like, always belonged to Confessions. But I left the soundtrack album there because the whole point of it was assembled for the sake of the animated series. And I guess then the 1 year anniversary rolled by, and and then they took like a month to put together their little crappy, stupid, yeah, we're shutting down video. And then, in classic Stable-Tech fashion, they released it on April Fools, or like almost April Fools, and it's like, son of a bitch. So I knew kind of once that happened, I was like, okay. Once the 2 year anniversary rolls around, I'll re-release it because, I mean, already this process has begun where we're like putting a lot of those music pieces to work in other places. Like we pulled that one track and we're using it a lot for Wasteland Survival Guide, and we're reusing a lot of the tracks because it's like it's all good music that shouldn't go to waste at all. And especially after all the work that the composers put into it, where we're finding purposes for them as many places as we can. I did the same thing with my portion of the Twin Terrors, the Shadows story. I used a lot of, I think, Light Veins' tracks. And, and also the Come to Me, which was, I guess, sort of our Valentine's Day special last year. With the Come to Me thing, I used their, I think it was the Equestrian Wasteland track. That was really good. So the point of it all was we're gonna keep the music put into work. And so because of that, and because now the series is dead and nothing's coming of it, I was like, okay, I might as well repost the video, and it'll give me an opportunity to remove the one song by that one asshole that used the Kevin MacLeod song, which are, you know, Incompetech, whatever. I had no idea. Like, I even watched, like, some Filthy Frank, but I guess I never picked up on it. And, I really listened really closely after the chat started pointing out that was, like, a rip song. So immediately it stained the release of the album, and I was also in a really bad mood at the time. I was, like, sort of fighting with someone in Stable-Tech about Confessions 5 casting. That was a whole other shit show. But, so that all happened, and what he did do is he took the Incompetech song and then, like, added, like, horns or one or two instruments to it, which is, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I had no idea. It was sort of sold to me as, like, a purely original track, at least when it was submitted, and I thought it sounded neat, so it was, you know, sort of scraped off the cutting room floor and put in the album, because, anyway, so that's gone, and I filled in my own, my crappy, poker ditty that I'd actually, like, fully scored that. It was originally written for this trailer for, was essentially going to be, like, a semi-virtual D&D thing. It was going to be called, like, Fallout Equestria Chronicles or whatever, and it was going to be, like, a roleplay story handled through the website to, like, increase the website usage. And they had this whole trailer planned out and written, and so I had literally scored it. And so I ran the video, and for the scene changes and the mood changes and that little, like, drum bit in the early beginning, and then the die-off at the end is when someone, like, breaks down a wall. So I was kind of proud that I was able to like do something. And of course, it's just a first try attempt, but it was something. Speaking of which, can you believe Filthy Frank is gone, or he finally retired the character, which I guess is good because it sounds like Joji like really does have like some neurological problems, and the character was just putting stress on his health. I remember that the one video that he ended up deleting was talking about like, yeah, it's kind of ironic how I have this character that makes fun of, you know, just a whole bunch of crap, and then he ends up starting to get like seizures for real. So that crazy. It's always the Australians, man. Just total shit posters through and through. But yeah, Filthy Frank was good. It sort of lived in a very specific time of the internet that I think is past, long past. So no, not too much of a future for that going forward. It had to evolve. As far as his solo career, he is good at like making the tracks and rapping and stuff. I don't know if that can carry forward fully as like a career, but he seems to be trying his best, so I hope the best for him. You know, that would be great. It's always good seeing like famous internet people like really reach success, you know, because that's the dream you hope for all of us, is that we were able to turn our internet, you know, silly video bullshit, whatever it is, into something like real and substantive and like maybe even a full-time job. So that's nice. I'm seeing in the chat news on Confessions. I did just get done with about sort of 10 minutes explanation of that, which is essentially I'm almost done with the writing of 7, and then casting and recording should go quickly enough. I'm so far working on a target of probably the end of May, you know, just based on my experience with casting and everything. It's been busy, and the spring is going to be busier, so I'm hoping that's the end game. We're going to see what happens, but I literally am almost completely done with the writing, so once that gets handed off, then I can get to the writing of episode 8 also, which episode 8 has a much more concrete like outline that I've been working on for a long time, so that one the writing should go a lot faster, and of course I want both of them out before the end of the year. That is the ultimate end game, is both 7 and 8 out before Christmas. And then as far as what's beyond that, you'll have to wait and see. We'll see what's coming up there. Okay, now we're up to 7 viewers. Any other like topic suggestions you guys are welcome to throw out at your leisure. I'm just screwing around. This is I'm bored and wanted to have a solo cast. You'll see the picture I've left on screen. I'm really proud of, because this is another one of those things that just sort of sat in Stable Tech dormancy for freaking ages. This was going to be the album art for Jingle Bell Rock. I might have told the story on one of the other podcasts, but I like the solo cast because I can go on with the story, and there's no peanut gallery in the podcast where, you know, telling me to shut up or move on or whatever. So this was originally the album art for Jingle Bell Rock, where the whole concept of the song, or the format, was these two characters, Sweetie Belle and Baritone, my sort of self-insert character, performing like one last big night at 10 Pony Tower before the war happens. Like, this is their last performance there, and then they go, and, you know, a month or two later, then everything gets fucked. But the video then would have been cutting back and forth between this performance and the tape, or the record, playing it during a Raider invasion of 10 Pony Tower, and sort of that sort of split scene thing, almost like that bit from Blade Runner in terms of like the action and violence, but originally it was inspired by that one song from Princess and the Frog, where she's going back and forth between the like Art Deco, like dream sequence restaurant, and then the real life, you know, just dusting off the crap restaurant. whatever happened to behind the scenes? We have Krellick in the chat. That is a good question. I was just going through that myself, and I was like, I think all the audio exists. I think there was maybe one character James had to recast or something. I really don't know. I would like to see that get out, though, because I recorded a freaking ton of stuff as cult classic. And I had a lot of fun, like, getting to throw around a comedic kind of J.K. Simmons character. You know, another thing, too, I'm still waiting to see is Pabs, the first episode of their series, which is an original thing written by James, their SFM like series. I'll be honest, that's why, like, any kind of animation I'm so wary of as a fandom point. I've seen too many animations just completely die on the floor of the internet. That's why, for me, it's like the only thing I have enough trust in is essentially like still art, you know. The most art I think I've had for a production is probably The Ranger, actually, because then I had to do a lot of the art for the studio myself. Like, a lot of that room was made by me, and kind of cobbling together some of the other characters, like Battered Blade and Amberhorn in her little chair there. So that was a lot of work, and that took a lot of time, like recreating the door and everything, because the original artist for Confessions, Lee, is long gone. I have no idea whatever happened to him. Maybe got but luckily I have sort of a new vector artist, and he's the same guy that did this Jingle Bell Rock art that you've been staring at, which is our lovely Sancho, who's been a real trooper. He's also the guy who did all the podcast art. So you really gotta send some love to him, you know, the fabulous Polish guy. So yeah, I'm really trying to just finish Confessions, so so he can do the art for me real quick, and I'll pay him, and then we're good. Then series is wrapped. And it's like I've said before, if I have to draw the art myself, if I have to voice every damn character, I'm going to wrap the series, because I actually do have a plan. Even though no one believes it, I actually do have a plan that I've been crafting slowly for like 3 years since I started writing episode 3, essentially. And it is going to come to fruition. I'm so close. Just like, I was looking back, and I was thinking back on all the trouble and the hopelessness going into episode 4, and I had no faith. Really, if it weren't for Oakhart saving the production by like replacing the original, because there was an original voice actress for Amber Horn. She's Australian, actually. She has a very, very thick accent. She was sort of because the whole first half of the sequence, you know, it's very Mad Maxy. Mad Maxine Furiosa, where, you know, they're going across all these highways, and we've got these like converted desert buses and crap. It's very heavily Mad Max inspired. So my original intention was that the Dad's tribe, all the slavers of Oasis, and hence our main character, they were all supposed to be very very Australian. And then the mother character, they were supposed to be... I hadn't decided yet. I thought maybe the mother character could have been like Midwestern, because the idea is that these are all like based on like the American Great Plains states. So like North Dakota and South Dakota and Nebraska, and my family come from North Dakota, in full disclosure, if that is, you know, if that's not apparent to people. Checking the chat again. SkyBored, have you ever read the Evil Overlord list? I have not. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, thank God for Oakhart. Honestly, if Oakhart wasn't there to like fill in and become the new Amber Horn, I might have let the series go. I don't know. I was so dejected from Stable Tech. I thought if it just died on the vine, I might have just like kind of gone away from Fallout Equestria for a while and maybe focused on other things. So, because it was during that time, you know, this is mid 2006, we had just released Fall of an Empire, and that was taking off. And so I was going to see if I could, you know, weasel with in real life Australian friend L Train and see if we could get like a third thing going. But that didn't work out, and then Confessions came back to life, so that was good. And then seeing, you know, even after losing our main artist and everything, episode 5, The Ranger, come to fruition again, that was a huge blessing. Just seeing that, like, work out. And then episode 6, I was also worried about because of how big the cast was. And I had to recast 2 characters, unfortunately, but you know what? Ice Mare got out there, and it was great, and I was finally able to tie in Pinkin, which I had also been planning for like a year, and the lead voice was adorable, and that was, you know, that was ultimately what mattered, was that I could have my French waifu character fully realized. my Curie creation. Oh yeah, people are mentioning the Discord. I really need to use the Discord more. I do apologize for people that like are in there. I'm very set in my ways, so it's like once I got used to Skype for pony stuff, it's hard for me to explore beyond. And Discord is different than Skype in a lot of good ways and a lot of positive ways why it's replacing Skype, but I haven't gotten used to it. And to be honest, I'm in quite a few servers. I think what I need to do is like turn off notifications or leave a few servers just so it's not noise, so it doesn't overwhelm me. What is your favorite parody song that you have worked on? That is a good question. Shoot, that is like... It's my original MO, so there's a lot to choose from. And I'm pulling up a list, actually, because it would be easy to just go with, like, what's the most popular, which would be 99 Problems by Views. But then again, in downloads, I don't think it is 99 Problems. It might still be Facing the Fallout. And really, I probably would have to go with that anyway, because that is what ultimately led to all this crazy Fallout Equestria crap anyway, was the early big success of Facing the Fallout. So I'm tempted to say that. Except for that, though, I might go with you know, another early success, and this wasn't Fallout Equestria related, was Hey There Fluttershy. That got a lot of downloads and views. Some of those, like, God, these are 5 years old now. Some of those really old songs, but most of them have been brought back to life in compilation albums, so that's good. It's sort of an excuse for me to take a modern mix to it, because my mixing skills are a lot better than back then, and also sort of like, I guess, normalize and also kind of re-release them for like newer fans that might not be familiar with them. So I need to get the next album out there, because I released Conventions and Classics around this time last year, and I have another one essentially ready, like a list together for what the next one. So we'll see what happens there. That's going to be a funny one. That's essentially a lot of my sort of comedic songs that I haven't bundled together yet. Yeah, it's good times. I'm really proud too. This is just a personal thing. I'm really proud of how the Wasteland Survival Guide art has been coming out, because the original plan, this is way back in 2013 when we pitched the Wasteland Survival Guide. Tyler Teschke, who did the cover art originally, I think it was mainly just for fun for him, but we were gonna have him draw a bunch of these the pen, the little pen drawings of each chapter, to give it that extra life, just like when you see all the different covers in the Fallout 4 with the I sold my mother or whatever Wasteland jerky. So, But then when all that fell at the wayside, it's like, okay, these just have to be like kind of crappy whatever drawings. It's like, that's something else that I can do. Something that takes one more extra cog out of the machine. Because that's it's very classical engineering principle, is you want as few moving parts as possible. So what I did is, if I myself am like the common core, the central spindle, is just add another gear, another cog on the side, so it's all driven by the one and I'm losing the terminology. I actually don't do much gear work. Most of my work is thermodynamics. So anyway, so it was nice that I was able to take over that facet of things, just to keep Wasteland Survival Guide moving. And this is really funny too. You guys might get a kick out of this. Originally, it was James and Needle that really wanted a solid schedule for Wasteland Survival Guide, like a very exact, like, you know, this release and this release. And early on, I was resistant to it because I was very well, I was in the middle of my move, so I was like sort of at a stopgap, and I don't know. It was one of those things where it's like, I hate setting schedules, because then the first time you don't meet a schedule, it feels like a failure, you know? That's why even early on in my channel, you'll see the first like year or two, I have quite a few releases, is because I sort of put on myself an idea of a new video of any kind every 2 weeks on average. And that started to become overbearing and overwhelming, especially then when I started like my IRL career. And so but luckily I never like publicly announced that, so there was no like, you know, Sundays at 7, because to be honest, that's not how the internet works. That was never the idea of the internet, was that like you're set to some kind of TV broadcast time that, you know, you bribed a government official to let you have that amount of channel time on the air. Gosh. You know, that's one thing very few people know, the origin of the NBC rainbow peacock logo. Like, that they brought in the peacock after the fact to be like, you know, a symbol, because it worked out, you know, colorful crap. Originally, what it was is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company, they bought a whole bunch of radio stations, and they had like, it was either separate tier networks or it was the separate bands, where there was like the NBC like blue stations and NBC red stations. And it was either something like the difference between UHF and I don't know what the difference was, but that was essentially it. It was a one giant story of just like what Disney's doing now, which is you buy all of the competitions and all the little individual outlier things, and you make them all subsidiaries. So once all those had come together, then you had your big NBC, you know, colored-assed turkey. Where's I going with that? I don't know why I'm talking about that. Oh, release schedules and TV. So anyway, so James and Needle were very, very adamant about a regular release schedule. But then once we did that for like a few weeks, their lives got busy too, and so that was out the fucking window. Now I'm usually the one that's you know, ready to go. As soon as you get me the audio and the script and stuff, just get it over to me. Oh god. And yeah, I got to get a few more of those scripts together now. It is great. We do have all the scripts ready, like, or not the scripts, but we have all the like items ready, like what the chapters are going to be about. So the whole plan is in place. The skeleton's always there. It's just like when you're going to start chewing off the meat. Oh yeah, we have people enjoying Dose. Yeah, the very first Terminal Secrets. I lucked out on that one. A lot of things came together and made that a good story. So I'm glad that people enjoy it. Uh-oh, we have message in no, that's email. What else is here? We have Get Happy, we have Memes. Ah, fudge. What else is there to talk about? I love this art of Ember and the knight. This is of course an old joke that goes back to like Shrek 1 or Shrek 2, where it's like you're supposed to slay the dragon, not lay the dragon. Oh gosh, the Princess Ember art is always adorable. So the dragon waifu. Yeah, no, the show in general, I feel like really like the Starlight Glimmer gave it a new life. The season 6 and 7 have just been like really quality. And looking back, you really think of at least I think of like season 3 and 4 as the valley. It was the low point. And even season 3, where there are a few episodes in there that I really enjoyed. I feel like that's sort of, you know, the hated child because it was so short. But it's like season 3 gave me Sombra, who I was able to turn into arguably my greatest work, which is the writing and music and the Fall of an Empire, to make his story a thing. And it also gave me the ending of season 3, which I still think is one of the better episodes, with all the musical, not You'll Play Your Part. The true friend is a friend indeed. And What My Cutie Mark Is Telling Me. And also, I think it's still underrated, was the Celestia like ballad that she sings to Twilight when they're in the like architect's like TV room where Celestia watches them all when they're naked. Is the how does that go? Is the "You've come such a long, long way." I don't know the lyrics. That's the other ironic thing for me, as someone who like changes all the lyrics and sort of makes them my own, is the fact that I really don't have the best like not photographic, but I'm not good at remembering lyrics to songs. I usually I'll know enough of the chorus, and then a lot of it I just sort of make up on the fly. Maybe those two things are probably related. And then I have the opposite problem, where then when I'm like asked to sing a song on demand, I will quite often like start with like my parody version first, and then have to go back to whatever the real song was, if I remember the real song anymore. Oh God. So yeah, we're reaching sort of the apex ape-hone of pony. So yeah, I know this year for sure is gonna ride it out, and then this is sort of like a final lap for me, I guess, in a lot of ways. I feel like then whatchamajigger. Then it might be a little bit extended into next year, depending on what we have left to do, and we'll go from there. We'll have the ending of Confessions for sure, and Terminal Secrets should be ending this year as well, because what I'm guessing from James's schedule, and I don't know, I should remind everyone, for those that really care, I'm not involved in not unyielding. No, I'm thinking Halo music again. Unyielding. I'm not involved in untypical production much at all. Like, I'm that character, like the priest character I played is like, that's my entire contribution to untypical. So just FYI, I whatever is going on with that, you gotta ask Vermont and Calais and all of them. So I don't know what his schedule is with that, but essentially I'm pretty sure Terminal Secrets episode 5, I expect that out to be first. I'm thinking I'd have to check with him on where everyone's recordings are at, but I think that one's due out in like April at some point, maybe later April. And then based on the scheduling, I expect Confession 7 to be out like maybe a month later. Sort of like what happened with Terminal Secrets 3 and Confessions 5, where we released Hunger right after New Year's, and then Confessions 5 came out at the very end of January. So I expect that's probably what'll happen, because now it's like, except for a few like busy like random crap, all my all my really crazy stuff, like the move and everything, that's all done with. Like, I'm all settled in. I'm planting roots. It's like, you know, maybe a few of my Saturdays are a little busier now that I have a life again, which is nice. But but as far as like the actual editing and stuff, that's all, you know, easy peasy, where I've worked my way up from, you know, the 20 minute, oh God, X-Raider all the way up to frickin' 4.5 hours of the Ice Mare. And really, all of them took me about the same amount of time in terms of, like, I guess, deliberation or whatever. So maybe not exact amount, but the general sense, the general feeling. So, especially with the Ice Mare, that went pretty smoothly. I think actually the Ranger ironically took me longer than either Ice Mare or the Engineer, because I don't know why. I feel like I just didn't have the mix down right for him or for the individual tracks. It's just like, I don't know. I was like going back and forth on stuff. So I expect that'll be quick when 7 gets out there. And 7 is also a little bit simpler in terms of character count. There's not like, you know, this giant freaking cast of like eight horses in the show. So that's going to simplify things a lot, because that's a big driver of production slowdown. Is just like with Ice Mare, one character, I didn't have one sentence, so we lost a month. I don't expect that to happen this time. I really think it'll go a lot smoother. And then episode 8 will be a big one. Not big like Ice Mare. It will have maybe a few characters. And then finale. We'll see where it goes with that. Yeah, can you believe this crap is like 15 hours long now? Holy cow. I really look back and I think about how much time that really is, how much like length it really is. Because of course down the road I want to get into like novel writing, because again it's all about just me, you know, just me doing stuff, and I don't have to wait for like a lot of big production delays, because of course I don't think I'm good enough where I could, you know, be a part of some major like radio play production company. I'd like to, you know, if people like my voice enough, I'd do my own voice, you know, any day of the week. It's just the classical, you know, actor problem where everyone wants to be an actor, but only 0.1%, you know, only 0.1% have strong enough jaw muscles to, you know, suck their way to the top. Oh my gosh. It's like they're going to change the name of the Oscars to the Weinsteins. Oh god, that's cynical. But it's also hard not believing that, especially when it's like especially not when it's like oh yeah, me too. It's like, well, you too, but why not you too like 10 years ago, when you could have like saved like 15 other U2s from having to do this? I don't know. That might have been something worth doing. Also, Harvey Weinstein is still walking around totally free guy. No punishment or anything so far. He'll probably still die rich too, because his rich brother still owns their big production company, and yeah, who knows. In the chat, SkyBored, what is going on over there with the New California movement? It's funny you mentioned that. I am actually trying my damnedest to get involved with that and contribute in any way I can, even if that means just graphics or just like behind the scenes deliberations or anything, because yeah, that'd be pretty nice to break New California off from the coastal city archipelago, where essentially it's like you've got like the Los Angeles like metroplex, and then you've got the Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area, just driving all of California politics. And it's like there's like a whole bunch of people that are just essentially, it's literally like a one-party state. Like when I voted for senator, it was either it was either Kamala Harris or it was some other chick who was also a Democrat. So essentially the way the system is, it's almost like I don't know how the California Constitution is written right now, but it's like almost classical American Constitution where it's just the top 2 people can be voted for. And so if the top like 5 people are all one party, then congratulations, you got a mono party. And even the current Jerry Brown, not his dad, but Jerry Brown, Governor Moonbeam, they had to do like this really funny court thing in the Constitution to let him be governor again. It was very fishy when it happened, but Governor Schwarzenegger was such a piece of shit, worthless, nothing governor that I guess no one cared or was paying attention. So Governor Brown was able to step right back into the old shoes. Because his dad was here a long time ago. It was is it Emmett? I think Emmett Brown, and he was the one that like helped fund a lot of the aqueducts in California, which is which makes sense because the aqueducts are the damn stupidest possible thing for transmitting water across 500 miles downstate. So let's picture you got California, which is like there's only one. California's full of natural resources, but the number one natural resource is sunlight. So when you want to move water from the north down to the south, hey, why don't we have this giant flat trough where the water is never really more than like 10 feet deep? And we'll just move the water down that way. There's no way that it's, one giant evaporation basin where all the water instantly disappears right back into the system, the ecosystem, the, Gaia moving that shit around. Instead of, say, like, an underground pipe, a closed, like, carbonate or concrete pipe, which is now what Moonbeam wants to do. And it's like, that would have been great, except for the fact that we give you so much goddamn money as it is, and you obviously aren't spending it on Californians, so no more. And the gas prices keep going up, and it's like, fuck California. So I'm hoping to help this new California movement just split the state in half, because that would really cornhole all these people, and we might actually get some representation in our state again. It's like, even in Texas, you get, like, Democrat governors. I mean, look at Alabama. They just got a new Democrat senator. At least it's like there's still 2 parties at play. In California, that's like, this is non-existent. It's like throwing your vote in the wind. It's going nowhere. And it's like, you can't have a democracy if you don't even have the 2 parties. It's like, going back, Washington, our founding father, George Washington, he didn't even like the idea of parties. He didn't want that to be a thing. But then you got John Adams and Jefferson, and they're like, nah, man, we gotta do parties. It's gonna be a party, bruh. Party like it's 1799. And so then you had the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, it essentially boiled down to a very common theme in America, which is states' rights versus federal central rights. And it's very complicated and so many different issues, and it's just anyway, so we have parties. And of course, I would love it if we could go to a much more representative, like, first past the post system, like a lot of European countries, where, you have like 4 or 5 parties in your parliament or Bundestag or whatever, and they have to form coalitions, and there's like negotiation at play. Like, that's a good thing. Then everyone is getting a little bit more close representation of their ideas in their respective state houses. But nah, we're stuck with the fucking elephants and the donkeys, which is just great. Everyone hates them in the general sense, but you got to pick which side you're on. And then here's the other thing, and why the American system is so broken, is that if you actually try to vote your own personal ideals, they end up working against you. So think about this, and I firmly believe that this is the reason Trump is president. If you want a real red pill, this is what you're about to take. If the Democrat Party did not fuck with their own primaries, if they just let them play out normally, they didn't do this the stupid what do they call it, super delegates thing, which is only in the Democrat Party do they have that. I firmly believe Bernie Sanders Bernie Sanders would have beat Trump in November. And especially you saw it at their convention. So I remember 2016, the Republicans, they had their convention in Cleveland because, gotta bring all the Rust Belt jobs back. And everyone thought that was going to be a total shit show. But luckily, it was somewhat under control because the Cleveland police actually did their jobs and kept order. But then, a month later, you roll into Philadelphia, and that was right after the fact that, Bernie kind of found out, it was never going to be you no matter what. Because he was the Trump of their party. He was the outsider that, had this massive populist groundswell, and they didn't take it as kindly. That was a total shit show. So, I'm almost afraid to look at the chat now. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah. Okay. New California representation. So, the problem is, when Election Day rolled around, writing in ballot is stupid, but say Bernie kept running, but it was under another party. Or say a lot of the Bernie supporters threw their votes to Jill Stein, which was very likely that it's similar. There was a lot of crossover there. If they did that, it took away votes that would have gone to Hill Dog, and so she got that much less votes in every individual jurisdiction. And that's the complication of federalism and the electoral college system. And it's not just one country. The separate states matter for a variety of reasons that most Americans don't understand, because our public schools are fucking bullshit and there's no civics anymore. It's there's a reason for this. It was called the what was the Jefferson quote? It's the policy laboratories was his quote, because Jefferson was a really Frenchy, very. He really liked all of the political theory of the day. So he liked using the terms like policy laboratories. So anyway, and that was the whole point of, that's why he led the Anti-Federalist Party, which was states' rights, which was he wanted each of them to maintain a certain degree of autonomy, which for him was Virginia. He was a Virginian, born under when it was its own thing. And that they would sort of see what the best policy was, and that would rise to the top. Now that it's complicated over time because every state has a completely different setup. It's like when you're building a role-playing character. You're okay, this character is not going to have oceans, so it's okay. You got a completely inland state. Okay, does your character have mountains with ore? No, it doesn't. So, okay, we're not Nevada. Okay, your state is one giant flat square. Oh, you mean North Dakota? Yes. Okay, your options are fucking tons of cornfields and wheat fields. It's okay. And so so every state has a completely different baseline setup. So even if you get your policy laboratories going, they only really apply to the specific individual setup of that state. In European terms, it'd be like if you take Spain, which is also a federal country with a lot of very complicated politics within, as Catalonia is showing right now, and you tried to apply Spanish constitutional law to, I almost said the Netherlands, but that's a whole, their own history too. Spanish constitutional law to Poland. It just doesn't work. So the whole idea of the policy laboratories is neat on paper, but the longer time goes on, they become less and less applicable. So that's why you should have voted Gary Johnson. Oh my God! Actually, if it weren't for when Bernie he threw as much of his vote as he could back at Hillary because he knew same thing could happen. Don't want to split the ticket. I actually thought freaking Aleppo man Gary Johnson was going to spoil it for Trump. I thought enough of the law libertarians would vote for him or freaking Evan McMuffin in Utah. And Evan McMuffin, he didn't even win Utah, which was hilarious. Oh my God. So I assume that almost everyone is tuned out now because we've talked politics for like fucking 10 minutes. I'm sorry. This is what happens with Skyblog individual casts. You want to go back to ponies? Hillary campaigned for the popular, Trump went for the votes. Yeah. And, yeah, I don't know about Trump, you know. It's, here's the thing. Is Trump, like, Trump's entire, like, his approach is essentially lie to everyone, and then when he actually does something, you have to, like look in retrospect, essentially. And like, you see a lot of the goddamn MAGA people like, oh, it's 40 chests. It's like, no, stop it. Just stop it. It's just, you know, he's just doing his own thing. And like, I'm almost tuned out of the news because you can't follow that shit anymore. The one thing that matters, and this is what matters because money is everything, is despite the news, the tax cuts really were tax cuts. And so, like, for me, I got, what was it? I think a 20% cut. So I'm making another, like, $2,500 a year now so between now and, let's say, frickin', what's voting day? November? So between now and then, that's like 9 months. A lot of people are going to make an extra grand or two. And that matters. That's how you buy votes. It's how the Democrats buy votes, just in different direction. So even though Trump is like completely wavering on a lot of other things and kind of bullshitting around and doing stupid neocon shit like stay in Afghanistan and fuck around in Syria, it's like, yeah, no, it's everyone's gonna have a little bit more money, so everyone's gonna vote for their, you know, elephant candidate, no matter how much, you know, it might actually screw up their state or vice versa. God, politics are like poison. It's what's a good word? Oh, here's a very sciencey, nerdy explanation. Politics are like oxygen, where it is slowly rotting your body from the inside, you know, without proper antioxidants. It's just eating you down at a cellular level, like dissolving you like a horrible chemical poison. But at the same time, it's something essential that, like, if you don't pay attention to it, that you also die. So yeah, that's life in America right now. It's really fucked. Oh God. What else is there to talk about? Do you want me to bitch about Star Wars anymore? I know James would hate that because he knows he lost the argument, but I can bitch about Star Wars more. Freaking Han Solo movie. I don't know what's gonna come of that. It looks fun. It looks like they're at least like trying to apply the fun factor again, which will be great. But at the same time, Lucasfilm is not Marvel Studios. They don't have a competent person like Kevin Feige running the show. So, I think the most horrible quote, and I assume he wasn't lying, was when Rian Johnson said, yeah, you know, I came in and they didn't really have a plan for the next movie or for like any of the structure or anything. So it was like, so what? Did J.J. Abrams and Kathleen and all those people just like come up with a bunch of open-ended plot lines and they expected him or whoever to just like go crazy? Like, I don't know what they were thinking. Also, the Porgs as a whole are much more annoying than Jar Jar Binks in episode 1. And I'm sure that's not a popular opinion, but in my personal opinion, that's how it is. Because Jar Jar was annoying, but they still made some good jokes out of it. It's like you still had you had Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, like, you know, cracking their bits to him, like, you know, the ability to speak doesn't mean you're intelligent. I wish we had better jokes like that about the damn Porgs, but it's like, I thought they were, I'm 90% sure that Disney just put them in the movie to sell plushies. Because there's so many of those Porg plushies now. And especially in like the freaking Millennial Falcon is the Millennial Falcon, where you gotta just fill the ship with millennials and hope that it takes off and doesn't need Adderall or anything. Oh God. Ponies, yeah. What else is going on with ponies? So the new characters are coming up. We got season 7 coming up. That'll be fun. Oh God, we haven't nuked North Korea yet. That's good, right? I'm sorry. The second like Skyblog video thing, which I'm not doing anymore because video is freaking hard. That's a lot of effort, and I think people would appreciate me just doing this kind of thing more often. So the freaking North Korea hasn't been nuked yet, which is good. I don't want to nuke North Korea. Here's the other thing. This might be unpopular opinion. It's like, why can't they have a nuclear arsenal again? Like, it's kind of one of those like weird things, and it's one of those that's like hard in America for people to understand. But think about if you're like some whatever other country, like. Well, how come only you guys get the nuclear weapons? You know, you're not talking about disarming, because that's probably impossible at this point across the whole world. But it's like, it's just like, can you blame them? They have been sort of like at war for all these like 50, 70 years, and America never pulled its troops out. After the Korean War, we've got like 40,000 people along the frickin' DMZ, and, you know, we fund all these weapons to South Korea, or Republic of Korea, or whatever, and it's like, China has a guiding hand in all of it, and that's like literally the only reason that the Korean War didn't get worse, or Vietnam, was like... Especially in the Korean War, there was the Douglas MacArthur plan of tactical nuking the Chinese battalions, which were at the I don't know what you call it, but it's like the line you draw where it's like you're not on the peninsula anymore. That's where all the People's Republic of Army were all like stationed, and his plan was essentially just like fucking drop like 7 or 8 tactical nukes along that border and turn the peninsula into a fucking island or something, and then invade China. It's just like, no, that would have been a bad idea, opening up more conventional nuclear warfare. It's like for regular use. And on top of it is that was a window that should have been addressed like 5 years earlier, when World War II actually drew to a close and the Kuomintang still had like a chance to stay on the mainland, that they didn't have to retreat to Taiwan. You know, that would have been the chance to do something, but you missed the chance, so let's go ahead and not start like, you know, free-for-all fun nuclear war. Oh, God. And of course, by that point, the Soviets had the nuke, too, so they were protecting China in that sense. So it's complicated. So yeah, it's like, you want to talk imperialism, then yes, pull the American soldiers off the DMZ, and maybe the Koreans could actually come to some kind of entente. I mean, I don't know, this might be the bullshit, like, Care Bear scenario, but what if they actually finally, like, rejoined as a people, and you had a little bit of, like, a middle ground found, where you had the wealth and the sort of market influence of South Korea and stuff, and then you had the arsenal, the nuclear arsenal of North Korea, and then you come together as a little, like German reunification in the 90s. I don't know. It's complicated. I'm not gonna pretend I understand Korean, like culture or that whole mentality. All I can say is from the American perspective of, I want less imperialism, like, all around. Well, like, I think a lot of Americans actually really hate the idea that we're now, like, the global police force. I mean, it is sort of a meme, but a lot of this is being driven by fucking boomers. All these old people that they're running on Reagan juice, where it's like, oh yeah, just put more military bases, more all this shit everywhere, and it's like, because it's rotting us from the inside, of course. Like, this is all money flowing overseas into this crap, too. And it's like, I don't want to be like, it's like, the longer we keep this up, the less likely we are to return to some kind of Westphalian order in the world. And that should be what we're working towards, like returning everyone to proper nation states, which is like, that's what you want. You don't want all these like super states like kind of fucking with everyone and people being like client states. Like, I think the same thing of Japan. Like, when we stopped the military occupation of Japan in 1950, we should have pulled out and let them write their own constitution or whatever. Like, because that's now a big cultural thing in Japan too, where what do they call it? I think it's Article 9, which is essentially the it's essentially the it's essentially like the chain around their nuts, where you can't have a proper military. You're essentially limited to only your like National Guard tier self-defense force, which is like, it's a major psychology in Japan of like, do we gamble with becoming like a full military country again at some point, or do we kind of keep this like sort of economic driven order going? It's, again, I'm not going to pretend I fully understand the psychology, but I've read enough about it to find it. It's very fascinating. And, you know, they shouldn't have to be this like client state of America either. That's not right. Let people be people, you know, that's what it should be. You don't fuck with things. Let people grow and develop on their own. We'll have more Wakandas and less less everything else. They're good gamers too. They are good gamers, absolutely. I see someone in the chat too mention Call of Duty Ghosts. I have a great story about that. Okay, so I had a friend in when I worked at the Navy Yard, and he is Costa Rican, which is really fun. So he has a very unique Central American perspective on things because of what Costa Rica is. But I was telling him about Call of Duty Ghosts, and he's like, wait. The premise is that all these South American nations like got together all buddy and formed like an EU superstate. He's like, bullshit. That would never happen. Even during the Spanish imperial period, it wasn't like that. You had all these separate commands where you had like I forget what it was called, but it was like the Viceroyalty of Peru, the Viceroyalty of Argentina, a Viceroyalty of New Spain, which was like Mexico and Central America. And it's like the idea that all these different factions, and then the Puerto Rican, you know, Brazil, all come together into some kind of mix. He's like, no, there's no way. And yeah, but no, the idea of the Odin tier kinetic weapon satellites, that would be interesting. I mean, the technology is sound. I mean, there's no, like, it's not like something we need to crack, like fusion or whatever. The physics are very simple. If you can get enough giant fucking tungsten rods into the atmosphere, or out of the atmosphere in orbit, then, yeah, you've got yourself a super weapon. All you really need are, like, sort of, essentially a J-dam, where you've got, like, guided fins that can direct it toward a target. That's an interesting military parlance from the endless sand wars that we're still stuck in the middle of, which is J-dams, which you'll hear like soldiers or like in movies and TV, they talk about them like that's a kind of missile. No. What a J-dam is I don't know what it stands for, but it's essentially a converter package where you plug a dumb bomb into the J-dam, and it's like fins and guidance computers, essentially. It turns your dumb bomb into a smart bomb. So that's what a J-dam is. Anyway, but you put like a tungsten rod into one of those things, and, you know, make that a tungsten 2 or whatever, so it doesn't melt in the atmosphere. And yeah, you could drop something from a satellite and land pretty much anywhere in the world, because that's another thing people don't realize, but geosynchronous orbit is like halfway to the moon. Like, if you think about your computer monitor, and I'm assuming you have like a 23-inch computer monitor or something, but like close your like thumb and index finger like you're playing the game and put it in the center of the screen. Like, from geosynchronous orbit, that's what the Earth looks like to the satellites. It's pretty far. And so from there, you send it in the right direction, and then you angle it whichever way to, you know, touch down on orbit, and it's like the beginning of Alien. You just blow up whatever the fudge you want. Yeah, that would be interesting though, like a Latin American super state. I wonder how that would hold together. Or not hold together, as it were. it's just like the EU. Like, the EU would be better, I think, if, like, it was much more individualized. Then again, I don't know. Our family haven't lived on the continent for like a century, and one of the reasons that my family moved here is because of a breakdown of states, which is the Norwegian-Swedish combined kingdom from like whatever to 1905. And at the end of the 1800s, things were getting kind of heated and crazy, and essentially my family, which were Norwegian, they were like, we're done with this. So they moved to North Dakota with all the other Norwegians. Have I played or seen Advanced Warfare? No, I have not. I've heard, I remember when they were marketing the, or no, not Advanced Warfare. Infinite Warfare had all the memes about, like, the most hated trailer ever and all that. Advanced Warfare, that was the one with Kevin Spacey, right? Where it was the private military corporations and Iron, what was his name? Like, something Irons or something. And yeah, I don't know much about what the game was, but I assume it was another one of those, like, asymmetrical kind of war games, like what we're playing now in real life. I actually really like that about Black Ops, and I don't know if Advanced Warfare was a Treyarch game, but yeah, Black Ops I loved a lot more than like the Modern Warfare games. I felt like it had a much better story and sort of, I guess put togetherness. I know that's not really a word, but I felt like there was more like kind of creative thought put into it. Like Modern Warfare felt a lot like a map generator, whether it's like, okay, we're gonna have this map where you're redoing the Wolverines scene from Red Dawn, which is cool. I mean, I like that, but it's like then it's just happening. There wasn't enough. Maybe the blame can be put on the transition movies. Like there wasn't enough like really solid connection between all of these story elements. It was just sort of like they were written and then they were like crammed together in some order that like kind of worked. And I guess that could be like leveled against a lot of games, but the Modern Warfare games in particular, I felt like were very guilty of that. Like the characters had no depth and the overall story really didn't have anything beyond just being, you know, a bunch of random scenes. So I don't know. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion. But then since Black Ops, I really actually haven't played too much Call of Duty. It was never really my series to start with, so I've just never really played much of it. But it seems like people are still getting a kick out of it. I don't know. They still make, you know, fuck tons of money, so they can't be that bad, I guess. At the very least, it's you know, good mechanics that people enjoy in like competitive shooting, and then the you know, the zombie maps and campaigns are all fun too. So I don't know. It's another one of those things of like, I'm not really a gamer anymore. I play Fallout. Like I own a Fallout machine in my Xbox, and that's about it. It's like beyond that, like even when it comes out, I don't know if I would get Halo 6. I feel like maybe I will because I guess I want like to put it to bed, but it's like when I got Halo 4, I was so unimpressed. I really didn't play it again for a long time. And then I got Halo 5 out of that same sort of fanboy like devotion. And then again, didn't play much of it after that. I played it more than Halo 4 because Halo 5 at least had now we're going back to the beginning. Halo 5 at least had a better soundtrack. It's like Kazuma Jinochi, who's from Hiroshima, and his soundtrack was the bomb. Whereas Neil Davidge did not. I don't know. It felt like he didn't understand like the emotional connection of Halo and the music. Like the Neil Davidge stuff was best when he was working with Kazuma Jinochi on the Halo 4 Spartan Ops music. Like the Spartan Ops score was a lot better because it was sort of like a collaboration, in my opinion. Or at least based on like the track, not track names, the track credits for each of the two of them. And then of course with Halo 5, they just gave it all completely to Hiroshima, and he went crazy with that. So yeah, I felt like he was the true successor of Marty O'Donnell in terms of the Halo score. And then Destiny kind of kicked Marty completely to the curb, but at the same time, Michael Silvestri, who I never like gave enough credit to during the Halo games, he still managed like to really pull a good soundtrack together for Destiny, which specifically the Taken King soundtrack stuff was really good, and that was the post Michael O'Donnell era, and I really enjoy it. Like, I think I like the Taken King stuff better than the base game. Why didn't I like Halo 4? My problem with Halo 4, I enjoyed the story in the general sense. Like, if I were just reading the story, I thought it was interesting. Unfortunately, I didn't like... I'm not even sure if all the books were out by then, but I didn't read the Forerunner trilogy until like a good 2 years after the Halo 4 game came out. So maybe that was part of the problem. I didn't fully understand the meaning of the librarian and the didact and all that good stuff. But at the same time, it felt very I don't know. It felt like the gameplay took a very serious drop in playability. Like, the stupid robot dogs were dumb. The idea of the Praetorians just being like these awkward things were also kind of dumb. Like, the whole concept of what the Praetorian... Is it Praetorians or Prometheans? Whatever. What they were... No, I think the Prometheans were the pre-Forerunners, the big fat bug guys. Anyway, the humans that he, like, super scanned and, like, you know, downloaded them into the robots, I felt like the design for the robots could have been a lot better. I think they should have looked more human and maybe, I don't know, maybe more human except with jetpacks like the Sentinels, rather than this kind of, like, weird new Forerunner look that they all had. Like, that was, I think a lot of it was art direction. I didn't like the look of the Chief himself. I didn't think all the Praetorians or Prometheans looked enough like the classical Forerunner look. Like, when I think Forerunner, I think, like, Quarantine Zone in Halo 2. That's Forerunner. That's, like, just crazy and creepy and all the right angles on everything and just the right amount of foreboding and mystery and, yeah, Praetorian is Mass Effect. That's right. Sorry. Yeah. Mass Effect 2. I actually I haven't played much of Mass Effect, but I do very much enjoy the soundtracks. Those are great. Because what was it? I got one of the video game. Was it called Video Game Live or no? It was the London Symphony Orchestra like video game music album. The first one, which had the Mass Effect I think Suicide Run music. And then it also had a great track from Dead Space, which is another game I never actually played, but the Dead Space music was good too. What are your thoughts on how the humans in Halo's past were descended from the human intergalactic empire from the Terminals? You know, personally, I didn't like that. I very much liked the idea that what's his name? Guilty Spark had said in Halo 3 about like, duh, humans are Forerunners. So the idea of the Forerunner sort of like intentionally devolving themselves, like, you know, dialing back like a few 100,000 years on the evolutionary on the evolutionary switch, and then like just like camping out on Earth, or like that's the last surviving colony, and maybe they had a few like Onyx. I thought that could have been cool too, like a few more living Forerunner in Shield worlds, like Onyx and like Requiem, which is Halo 4. But the idea that they were like competing empires, and then the humans were like the ones, or what is it that the humans did find a way to fight the flood, and then it was the Forerunner that sort of fell prey to them, or they beat the humans, and so they lost the cure for the flood or the way to stop them. I forget. See, I have to re-listen to all the Forerunner books again. But I remember just like, I don't know. I like the idea of the flood being an extragalactic thing. I feel like in science fiction, that is sort of like the next frontier, is that everything is extragalactic. You know, like the Yuzon Vong from the Star Wars universe. That was one of the many reasons those books were very successful. It brought in an added air of mystery. It's sort of like that's where we are, where we need the next level. You know, either something is from another time or from so far removed from our reality or our dimension that it's like truly alien. And yeah, so that was kind of neat. I liked a lot of the raw materials, but I'll be honest, I don't think Greg Bear, who was, you know, wrote the books, again, I don't feel like it had the feel of Halo writing. Like, I think back to the old days, and for me, Halo books are the books written by Eric Nyland. And maybe that's way too specific or way too, like, compressed, but it's like, all the best books were his. You know, it was the original Fall of Reach, and then First Strike, which is like between Halo 1 and Halo 2, and then it was Ghosts of Onyx, I think. And those were quality. It's like, you know, I liked Cole Protocol and was the one not Ghosts of Onyx, Harvest. Contact Harvest, that was it. They were interesting, but it didn't quite have the feel. It didn't strike the iron like the Eric Nyland books did. So I guess I'm a bit of a purist in that. I'm a Gen 1er like Pokemon, but a freaking Halo. So there you go. Maybe the next generation really love it. Maybe they're really digging the new trilogy and all that. Like, that's what I think for Star Wars too. It's like, is enough of the young whippersnappers like really connecting with this, or is it just like, is it not really working out? Based on my totally unbiased perspective, I don't think the Disney Star Wars is really working out all that much, but that's just me. And now they have Rian Johnson planned for a whole new trilogy, which is like why? Like, I don't know if that's still on the table, but like developing his own trilogy and like some separate corner from start to finish, I don't know. Like, a lot of The Last Jedi felt like a troll. Like, he really assembled the movie to just kind of like middle finger everybody. So have I read the Star Wars Legends comics? No, I have not. I've read parts of a few of the books. Like, I'm halfway through the second book in the Admiral Thrawn trilogy, the Dark Empire Rises or whatever. So that's interesting. I like the Thrawn books, and like Thrawn's captain guy, who's like you know, the captain of the ship they're driving, the Chimera or whatever. It's a really interesting like character like duo, and how their personalities bounce off each other. But yeah, Halo Descendants, yeah, that's, I guess that's sort of where I am on all those right now. What's funny too is I have a whole lot of like my own sci-fi universe ideas that I've been like slow boiling. Essentially, they've been in the old mental cooker for like, I guess 4 or 5 years now, just since university when I started like getting into writing. And I'm very excited. I feel like I'm really getting more and more of a plan together for like a multi-novel like series. Like, this is the next big interconnected story after Confessions, and it'll be fully original IP. You know, it'll be the non-horse story. So you know, see if I have any potential beyond the Nuclear Horse fan base. I don't know. It'll be fun at the very least. I'll get like probably, you know, a couple of them written, and yeah, maybe, you know, self-publish on Amazon or something, and see if they go anywhere. And also probably some like short stories scattered throughout too. I like that as like not filler material, but as like sort of like extra flourishes, like how the Come to Me story is technically part of the Confessions universe, or, you know, Confessions canonicity, and how I sort of pulled Terminal Secrets into Confessions as well with the Pinkin connection, and the Shadows from Twin Terrors is also a Confessions thing. I hate to do this, but I actually have to take a bathroom break, so let me write up a little sign, and maybe I'll put on like a song for you guys and be back as soon as possible. because I'm still bored, so I'm still probably gonna like bullshit a little bit, but you guys will have to give me like a few minutes. How the hell do I just add text to screen? Fudge. Is there a add? Oh, here we go. Okay. Create new. Select font. This is like I've been using freaking OBS for like almost a year now, and I'm still only like, you know, it's like I only learned enough stuff that like matters for the moment, but I never really like explore beyond the needed utility until until I actually have to do something. So let's go ahead and do this, and I'll give you guys something something juicy to stare at. Okay, give me like 3 minutes. Okay, I am back. Sorry, I probably should have put in some music or something to fill the dead air, but the I gotta find enough like common source music or whatever that like isn't freaking you know, it isn't gonna get us put in YouTube prison, because here's the thing, now YouTube has a whole bunch of new policies coming down the pipe. I guess it's like I don't even fucking know. I can't keep track of all of YouTube's like shit anymore. So it's just annoying. They just don't care. They don't care about us little creators who just been scrolling around. You know, just scrolling around. We're not the big, you know, big professionals. We're not professional enough. So we don't get any love from the YouTube staff. But if Abrams wasn't such see, that is sort of the elephant in the room, isn't it? Is that Star Wars is becoming just a tad bit to SJW. And here's the thing. This is just like the problem of LGBT characters in just fiction in general. It is like, I guess it's like we're sort of beyond the point of like the 90s problem, which is all the gay characters were like really gay. no, but like, you know, they were overdone to the point where it's like that became their only defining like character trait. And here's the thing, that's like literally the opposite of what you want to do. You want to make your you know, differently gender oriented character to be a character. That's the whole point, is that they are a personality, they are a character. You know, you really, it's like they say, you don't want their sexuality to be the driving factor in anything beyond like, you know what? I'm just going to be sucking Pete Hines' dick now. You know who does this really well is freaking Fallout New Vegas, where you had Arcade Gannon and Veronica, and what are they? They're characters that they have, you know, in their own personality and, you know, purpose and desire and factions and all this stuff. And it's like, unless you dive really far into the like language, you don't come up with the fact that, you know, Arcade Gannon is gay or that Veronica is lesbian until like a certain point. You know, obviously it does come up at some point if you talk like backstory and you know, interests and things like that, but it's like that they are just a normal character, that they're not just a, you know, that they're not just a vehicle. And that was the problem with, you know, Admiral Tumbler, is the fact that she wasn't a character. She was just a set of, like, kind of, like, strike line items that they had to get across. They're like, okay, we really need her to be, like, the tough, strong, woe-mine Admiral. It's like, well, wait, don't you guys already have, like, General Leia? It's like, no. This one has to be, like, tough, strong, woe-mine. And so out of nowhere, they have to make Poe this like extra, you know, hateful cis male kind of like guy, and all these like undertones and implications that he's like, oh, this woman in charge doesn't even have like a flight suit or something. And it's like, when was Poe ever like that in the first movie to start with? Like that, you know, all these underlying things, and it's just, when it feels like all your writing arises from like that, from like a few things like that to get across, it doesn't work. And it also robs actual characters of great moments. Like, a lot of those moments should have been with just Leia, and a lot of other moments, like sacrifice moments, should have been Admiral Akbar instead of, you know, freaking Jurassic Park lady. It's just a detriment, because it just, honestly, it just pisses people off, because you're kind of like using it to spit in the face of like beloved characters that have been around for like 40, 50 years. And here's the thing, it's like, when was Star Wars like offensive? Like, I thought, you look at the original trilogy and it's like Leia is a fairly strong, competent character. It's like, yes, she does get captured, but at the same time, she like resists like Vader, and she like, you know, speaks back to him, and she does a decent amount of like fighting and everything. It's like, especially for the 70s, it's like she was a good character, and now it's like, it's kind of like going back in time and being like, oh, not good enough, and like turning everything like up to 11, I guess. And I don't know, it's interesting, but Disney, they're betting their horse on it, and we'll see what happens. Big thing with the new Star Wars movies is that, yeah, there's no conflict here. Okay, yes, the hyperdrive weapons have also completely broken the Star Wars universe. Like, now it's beyond repair. Thank you, Rian Johnson. Here's another thing for me, and I was really like, when I first was watching the movie, I really was getting my hopes up when this was happening, where they killed, what's his name? Not Emperor guy, Andy Serkis. They kill Andy Serkis, and so then you've got Kylo Ren and Rey just standing there, and he's like, join me, and we can, you know, kill the rest of them and make the world ours, you know? I hate my parents, but I also love my grandpa. How great would it have been? How, like, groundbreaking would it be if she had teamed up with him? Like, they talk about originality in the new movie, which is bullshit, by the way. The new movie was nothing but Empire and was it Return of the Jedi, stirred up and then like reconstituted. But how great would it have been if she actually did team up with Kylo? Like she went through like a gray Jedi arc with him being like a Sith Lord Light and whatnot. And that would have been really interesting. So now you've got her as like him as like super force user. He's got all of Grandpa's super genes. And then you've got her, which is sort of like the Force manifestation of balance, which is like, okay, Luke kind of gave up, so now we need some new chick to like fight Kylo, because he's way overpowered and he's nerfing the universe. And then she joins him. That would have been really interesting. It's like, then do we get more like little kids on casino planets like becoming superpowered? Or when does the break with them happen? Like, does he take advantage of the new galactic government, whatever that is right now, and go forward? It's like, these are all like conversations that that really should have happened in 2012 when they actually bought the series. And apparently Mark Hamill signed on when it was still George Lucas, but before the Disney purchase or anything happened, they had started planning a sequel trilogy. And it's like, so no planning went into like, okay, these 3 movies, this is the arc, and this is who this is. Like, yes, the original trilogy was kind of like written in this like cobbled way, and George did a lot of changes where it's like, okay, and she's his sister, and Vader's his dad. And yeah, it's like, it was very like weird the way it did roll out, but it's like, you did have like some creativity and some guiding hands. Like, I guess I can't say that about freaking what's his name, the other original writer, because he's been writing the new ones too. And it's like, what are you doing, man? Lawrence Kasdan. So it's like, it makes me look back and I'm like, okay, maybe what was his name? Ian Kirshner, and then Marquand, I think, were the 2 directors of the last movie. It's like, maybe they had a much more like comprehensive guiding voice than people give them credit for. I don't know, because it's like, a lot of people said the problem with Star Wars was that you didn't have Lawrence Kasdan. It was just George writing the prequel trilogy, which is why they got really messy. And to some extent, I think that's true. I think what the difference is that George Lucas is the idea man. Like, I think anyone who's seen a decent amount of the Clone Wars knows that there was a lot of raw material in the prequel trilogies. They just didn't come together well. And I think what Lawrence Kasdan brought was a bit more of like the actual dialogue. He brought the delivery together in a much more meaningful way. So all the little individual scenes work out much better for like your feels. But at the end of the movie, when you actually look back over everything that you've been digesting, you're like, wait a second. Why was this like this? And we're doing a Death Star again for the 3rd time? Like honestly, being a kid in like 1982, I probably would have been a little bothered of like, what, they're just doing another Death Star? Like with Return of the Jedi. Like that was obviously where things were starting to get spun out of control. And then of course the Ewoks, which were just toys. They should have been Wookiees. It was different. I'll be honest, looking at Jedi, like, all the best parts were, like, the throne room scene. Of course, the space battle was pretty good. The, running around the Force was interesting. Like, I guess this is totally, like, a visceral thing, but I loved the idea of the speeder bikes. Like, you're on these, like, floating, like, 150, whatever, 200 mile an hour, like, flying motorcycles in the middle of a dense coastal redwood forest. Like, that's cool. And it's someone who grew up right by that forest. Does like, the idea of having your own speeder bike is just so neat. And just the look of them, like, I got really jazzed for those. Like, so that's what I liked about Return of the Jedi. But, yeah, that had, of course, had a lot of the problems of kind of cobbled together, not enough fluidity in the story, which, I guess is something that could be layered against my own writing in the past too, but I'm still learning. I don't know. I should probably look back at the chat again. Another problem is the First Order is super incompetent. Okay, yes, part of that was, and this is what those freaking hack frauds at Red Letter Media, they said during the Force Awakens review, like, oh yeah, this is totally what Lucasfilm had to do, that they could remake the Star Wars. And I'm like, says who? I didn't want a reboot of A New Hope. Like, what the hell? No, I wanted something completely new. I wanted the next trilogy, which would have followed much in line with like a good writer, like the Admiral Thrawn trilogy, where it's like, okay, we're trying to pull an actual galactic government together now instead of just being this ragtag group of rebels. But because I guess, yeah, it's like the prequel hate went too far. And I think part of that was that it was like also occurring at the same time that the internet was blossoming as a medium. So it's like when think of like a cone. When the internet was still a small ring of a certain size, all the prequel hate started flooding in nonstop in 1999. Can you believe how long ago that was now? And it just started. So as the internet grew, the voice got like amplified, and it got louder and louder and louder, and that was like a very central mainstay of the internet and like online critiquing in general, you know, largely because of people like Red Letter Media. So it's like, of course, they would come across as hypocrites if then you roll out the new trilogy and they're like, well, what the fuck? It was just like the old movies. And it's like, why did you want that? And of course, like, their whole perspective on Star Wars is this very like clinical, like, oh, we're film students, so we're gonna look at everything by the camera angles and like all this really freaking stupid stuff. It's like, okay, I took a film class too. I get it. Like, you want to be like super professional and like be all hip and trendy like that, but it's like as a universe of like a very rich, very devoted fandom, which I don't even think I'm that devoted. I think I fall somewhere in the middle of like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably a 5. Like, I had a friend growing up who he read every single one of the extended universe books, and I'd probably place him at only like a 7 because he didn't have like all these mountains of toys and crap either. But it's like, obviously Disney was trying to strike a fire too hot in just rebooting the original and then essentially kind of reconstituting a new fan base. That they were essentially saying like, oh, the old fans, you're going to show up no matter what. You know, you take it. But then you hear all these undertones like in The Last Jedi, like, you know, you got to kill the past, you know, no matter what. You just got to stab my dad and then let my flight buddies kill my mom, I think. And then she lived, but like he let her die. It's not like he stopped the wingmen from shooting Leia in right in the command deck. How unfortunate is that also? Like, this is like the Dark Knight now, where it's like the one original character that survived, Leia, the actual actress has passed on. It's like, oh god, that sucks. I would love, you know, as soon as someone invents it, I would love to hop in the alternate universe machine and see what would the third Dark Knight movie have been like if Heath Ledger were still alive. Could you imagine what that could have been of him sitting, you know, tapping his toes in Arkham, or like, who knows what that story could have been. And of course, like, Bane and all that has risen to its own sort of like meme tier, whatever, like, you know, I enjoyed The Dark Knight Rises. I fully love that movie, but it's like, no, it can never top what The Dark Knight was. Because even like, you think of Batman Begins, it was a good movie, but The Dark Knight like elevated the genre, and honestly, it cast such a large shadow that like DC was never able to recover from it. Like, you know, Christopher Nolan, the actual creator, he and his brother, of course, Jonathan Nolan, helped write and everything. They did their best to like top The Dark Knight after Heath Ledger died, but you couldn't. And I think The Dark Knight Rises was the best they could do, and it was good, but it's that one step below, and I don't think anyone can argue otherwise. But Then you get the DC universe, which is just this like, you know, this chocolate soft serve right out the ass of Warner Brothers. And it was weird too. So with the Man of Steel movie, like there was a lot of heavy implication that Man of Steel was part of the Dark Knight chronology, that the Dark Knight is going to be the Batman of the DC super extended universe. Because, you know, the Dark Knight released right as soon as Iron Man did. But then 4 years later, when you had the Dark Knight Rises come out, that was when Avengers happened. And suddenly DC were like, oh my god, look at what Marvel just did. They strung 4 or 5 movies together into one giant super arc and then brought it together in this masterpiece of the Avengers that like brought all the characters. And I mean, it's so clever. Like, you've got all these characters already set up and you've got all these actors on like a 10-movie contract. And so then you bring them all together. Everyone knows who they are already. So you can just play out your big battle movie of the Avengers, and it was great. And then you have someone like Joss Whedon, who is very good at writing ensemble casts with like dynamic dialogue and stuff. That's Joss Whedon's whole fan base love him for almost that alone. You know, you think of the Fireflies and the Angel was one of his, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And so then DC, you know, once they're staring down this behemoth of, it's their only real competition. It's DC and Marvel, the big two. And they're like, oh, fuck, Marvel's about to totally outpace us in the movie universe, which is a universe that DC had kind of been owning for like decades. Ever since, ever since Superman, not Christopher Reeves, the Christopher Reeves movies of the 70s, they were solid and like still well known and well loved, even though they're corny as hell. And then the last two sucked. And then they struck it again with Tim Burton's Batman and that series. And even though they have a very horrible like fall off at the end for both those series, like DC was owning the movie universe, and now Marvel just had this just unstoppable vision of Kevin Feige and friends. And so Man of Steel was supposed to be like part of that universe, and I don't know why they didn't. I guess the reason why they didn't is because Christopher Nolan was done with superhero movies, which can't necessarily blame him for. He really can't top The Dark Knight, and he literally tried. So then they're like, okay, we had this sort of handoff movie in the Man of Steel because Christopher Nolan did produce it, but then they made the colossal, awful decision of handing the keys to the kingdom to Zack Snyder. Oh my god, it's like, I saw 300 and Watchmen, and those were both fun, but I knew nothing about the comics beforehand or the characters. I went in and, yeah, you know, the story was kind of there, but it's like that was raw materials from an existing comic. And as a person who maybe read the comics, you know, or growing up or whatever, it's like I don't think they were very good adaptations. It's like what Zack Snyder is good at is being a director of photography. That is what he should do, or cinematography, whatever, where you're framing scenes and shots and composition of all the good stuff. But anything to do with actual writing or dialogue or story, Zack Snyder needs to be kept very, very far away from it. And that was the problem, was that Warner Brothers just, they didn't know what to do. So they're like, okay, you kind of, you know, made us a lot of money with the Watchmen's, and Man of Steel did all right, so here you go. And then already you had Avengers 2 like storming down the path, and you had Phase 2 Marvel trucking along at a good pace. So they're like, okay, we're going to do Batman and Superman. Immediately we're going to cram both of our most beloved characters together. And then we're also, you know, let's jizz in some other like random characters as well to start off our Super DC extended universe. And it was too much. They didn't have all the proper build-up like the Marvel films, and And we know how the story plays out, and it's just unfortunate that it's this constant this constant catch up that they'll never win. It's like being in a dream and you're trying to reach the end of a hallway and the hallway keeps getting longer. I just like I do feel bad because growing up I was more of a DC fan. I didn't know anything about most Marvel characters. Like I kind of knew like the arcade game where I'd play Iron Man because that was kind of fun. It's the robot guy, and I liked the Spider-Man movies and the X-Men movies when they were coming out. But otherwise, I really grew up on Batman the animated series, and then to some extent Superman, but more directly following it was Batman Beyond, and then the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited and all the individual movies. And you see a lot of that very quality writing talent and like the Bruce Timms and all of them. And it's like, oh, that was my childhood. Much more than Marvel was DC. And then when it finally came time to like bringing that magic to the big screen, well, hell, even the Batman Mask of the Phantasm, that was in theaters for a little bit, and that was a really good movie. Oh, and the score too. The whole opening sequence of Mask of Phantasm is just incredible. And you have the choir and the voices and what's her name? Shirley something, the composer. And she's passed on now. That's unfortunate. But she was a great composer for the series. And yeah, I don't know why they couldn't just like bring them in or something to getting the live action series together. It's just, I assume that maybe they're very like storyboard driven writers, or maybe they're such completely separate divisions of Warner Brothers that no one even considered it. But it's like, it's just sad. It's really sad that they couldn't pull that kind of, because I mean that's what they had done. Like Bruce Timm and Friends, they had this entire animated universe all connected together. You had The Dark Knight, you had Batman, or you had Batman animated series, you had Batman Beyond, you had Justice League, you had Static Shock, you had Superman, and they all gelled together so cohesively. It was like, damn, why couldn't you even like 3 or 4 movies together for your DCEU before everyone is like now you're like a case study in like film books about like what not to do. Okay, so this is Marvel for making your super duper mega ultra franchise, and DC, this is what you don't do. And then you have like the joking sidelines like Universal. I don't think anyone's even heard of this because this isn't like, it's not like a comic character, you know. So Universal Studios, and for those who aren't American, it might be not as well known, but during the golden age of Hollywood, Universal Studios was one of the earlier studios. There was like a lot of very big interstudio like dynamics and like infighting, and it was very like, it's kind of becoming that way again, but it was very big in in terms of the drama. It was like at tabloid shows, like, oh, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer stole what's his name from 20th Century Studios and blah blah blah. Anyway, so Universal, they were taking a similar approach to Disney, which at the time, like literally Walt Disney, they were just taking a bunch of old fairy tales and converting them because all those fairy tales fell in the public domain, so they could just do whatever the hell they wanted and they didn't have to charge anyone for copyright. Those bastards. This is so, you know, knowing Disney, who they're like bankrolling the entire copyright system in the United States. It's bullshit that they made the House of Mouse empire off of these old fairy tales that have been public domain for centuries. Anyway, while Disney was doing that, Universal was doing a similar thing with essentially public domain monsters. So they were taking like The Mummy and Frankenstein, you know, which is like the original science fiction story, Mary Shelley, written in, was it Switzerland when they were on their getaway when she wrote it? Because Frankenstein himself, the doctor, is supposed to be Swiss. I think it was when they were in Switzerland. Anyway, So they took a lot of those old monster stories and Bram Stoker's Dracula, and they were just creating new movies based on those old public domain monsters. And Universal was basically established off of that. That was their golden goose. That was their Snow White. Some of those original monster movies were so popular. It's their history. And so, so for the last like 10 years, Universal has tried, I think, 2 or 3 times to do essentially the Marvel thing. They want to launch their big interconnected monster movie universe. And if you think of, even before Marvel, you think of similar attempts of combining movie monsters like Van Helsing or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. While I personally enjoyed both of those movies in a kish way, they did not do well at the box office. So now their Dark Universe, which is like the Universal Monster Super Universe, the most recent attempt of doing that was with the new Mummy movie, with Mr. Scientology manlet Tom Cruise, where they I mean, if you've seen the movie, which I don't think anyone else has except me, if you've seen the movie, like you find out early on that the main sort of like puppet master working behind the scenes in his little like monster system is Gladiator Man, fighting around the world. What's his name? Oh God, what is his name? Anyway, it's that guy, the Australian guy. He's it turns out he's Jekyll and Hyde. He's Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll. And so it was going to be like him like being Mr. Monster Collector, and they had their eponymous like hinting scene where they're walking through this big gallery of like sacred items, and there's like a skull with vampire teeth and all this stuff of like, you know, all of Universal's plans for the next whatever years, and this is going to be the beginning of the Dark Universe. And Tom Cruise, which is Mr., you know, on-screen money man, they thought he would help sell the universe to the public. And you know, the sad thing is I didn't think it was a bad movie. I actually, what they did with like the, I guess like the subject mummies or like the zombies, it's like essentially what the mummy, like capital M, which is the woman mummy, what she does is she like touches the first it's these pilot guys and then some other guys, and it like essentially like she sucks the energy off of them and they become just these walking husks. So they're like kind of mummies, but they're also like essentially ghouls or zombies. And I personally thought they were scary as hell. There was really decent like animation and characterization, and I thought it was interesting. So but yeah, no, the movie it wasn't good enough to kick off a franchise. It was no Iron Man, and it was no Dark Knight, which is what DC sort of substitute used to kick off their franchise by the sort of half-truth, half-lie that Man of Steel was going to be part of that chronology. So yeah, don't expect Dark Universe to be going anywhere. And then another studio that did the same thing was damn Ghostbusters 2016, which is you know, there were so many videos made about Ghostbusters before and after. There's not much else I could say or add to the mix except like, I guess, what did you expect? Like when you hammer the politics in the marketing so much, it's going to be divisive. It's like if you set out to be divisive, like congratulations, you were divisive. There's also this fundamental misunderstanding of what Ghostbusters is. Like the original Ghostbusters movie was those 3 comedians that they caught lightning in a bottle with their 3 odd, quirky personalities somehow meshing together into a cohesive screenplay written by what's his name? The nerdy guy. Rest in peace. But it's like, you know, you had all of Dan Aykroyd's goofy, like, unironic believe in ghost stuff. And then you had Bill, I almost said Bill Nye. You had, Anyway, all their different like chemistry and like comedic styles just hit in the right way to make Ghostbusters. Even like a few years later when they made Ghostbusters 2, it was a disaster, and it didn't make money, and it killed the franchise except for like the TV cartoon, which was just like another Saturday morning cartoon, but it had its little fan base. And then they like sat on the franchise forever. And then they had like the quote unquote official Ghostbusters 3, which was the Ghostbusters game. And I guess a lot of people like that. But then with this new movie, it's like, what it ultimately comes down to is that Hollywood doesn't have enough new original ideas. This is still more of like digging up bones of old franchises and like, strapping like rotors or throwing the carcasses into like a Y-17 trauma harness and walking them around like, oh, look, new Star Wars movies. It's like, come on, man, just something new, something innovative. There are so many books out there that write original stories. Pull up another book that's like decent and build off of that. That's what all these other things did at one point. I mean, how many like... Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of famous movies started off on screen as famous movies, but a lot of them are adaptations. You think of like 2001, arguably one of the top 10 movies of all time, the Stanley Kubrick masterpiece. That was a book. That was adapted from the, is that Asimov? I think it was Asimov. It's one of those, famous turn mid-century sci-fi authors. It's their book. And then, then of course they try to make more of those because it was like a series. So they made the 2010 First Contact and what was it then? Like 2067 and then like a 3001. So anyway, it's like books are where the good stories are that you could dig up. And every once in a while they try, but then they fuck it up. So it's like World War Z, which I've said how many times that Confessions is largely inspired by the format of the World War Z audiobook. But just as a book, World War Z is really good. And it's like, they dig it up, and then they make like generic-ass fucking zombie movie, and with a good song. I have to admit, I really like the theme song they use from, what's their name? I almost said Moby. It's not Moby. It's, oh, fuck. What is that band? I can't remember anything tonight. Anyway, the theme song is good. But then, when we're like waiting, or at least I am, waiting desperately still for the third 28 weeks later movie to come out, it just doesn't exist. And I'm like, that was a good zombie movie. Back when zombies were still like, they hadn't grown stale because, they ran Walking Dead into the ground yet. It was like, if only we could have gotten the third 28 weeks later movie. That would have been great. All right, I better look at the chat again. It's been a while. I've been rambling. Batman. No. Yeah. Yeah, the Ghostbusters. It's unfortunate. And now the franchise is dead again. Oh, that was my whole point in bringing it up, was that they were trying to make Ghostbusters into a big super universe. They had formed like a whole sub-corporation called like Ghost Corps or whatever, and they were gonna like, it was gonna kick off the new Super Ghostbusters expanded universe, which is like how? How do you make Ghostbusters into an expanded universe? Like, really? I don't know. Maybe a smarter person would have had an idea, but it's just like with Disney and Star Wars, it's like, someone has to have the idea first. You can't just be like, we're gonna make this as a super movie. Like, I mean, hell, James and I could do that. Let's say someone hired James Vermont and I. Okay, you guys, congratulations. You are our Russo brothers. We are going to hire you to make some new IP whatever. You know what James and I would do? We would sit down at we'd sit down for a week and generate a shit ton of ideas for what that thing could be. Let's call it a radio play series. Let's say it's a combined 8 hours worth, 8 1-hour episodes radio play series. And we'd come up with a shit ton of ideas, and we'd schedule a weekly meeting for Saturday or something, and we'd probably spend 5 hours in those meetings every Saturday hashing out all of our ideas and putting them up against each other until, you know, the diamond starts forming at the center of the coal. And we would have some very solid outline put together, and we're like, okay, so the first episode we would have, oh shit, I don't want to spoil one of my actual like story ideas for the future, so let's pull something that, out of nowhere. Okay, like Robinson Crusoe, let's go with that. So we have this guy who he has a plane, and he goes down on an island, and he's trying, so the format of the story is his communications trying to get off the island, and he's sending like radio transmissions off island to you know, to civilization somewhere, and none of them are getting through, and no one knows he's down there. It's like, goes completely dark, like the Malaysian airline. No one knows what the hell happened to it. I mean, hell, put him there in the South Indian Ocean. There's like a French territory and whatever. Put him on that island. And like Robinson Crusoe, have it be like, start off with monologuing. The first episode is just him monologuing, going through those clips of like, is anyone there? And then he's just like talking on the radio. And, you know, maybe he figures out a way to extend the battery. He's got like a solar panel or something open on the beach. And he's like, yeah, you know, I'm talking, I guess, for my own, you know, sanity or whatever, and I hope Martha can hear me. You know, start building those connections, outside characters and whatnot. And then the second episode, we would bring in another character, and that character would also change the format, maybe. That's something James would definitely like, is every episode we like change up the actual audio format of the episode. So then we would have that other character, whatever they are. Maybe there's someone like him, like we take the Kong Skull Island approach, where there's someone that got downed there years before. Or maybe there'll be a native where he's like communicating with like hand signals, like this is North Sentinel Island or something. And then maybe that guy gets sick or something. I don't know. The whole point is that James and I would go through all possible ideas for whatever the series is, whatever they're looking for, you know, the general genre of said radio play, what kind of sound dynamics they would want, what kind of storyline would be the best for that sound dynamic. Like, let's say they wanted like a musical. So you know, we started writing like a Victorian era, like, you know, a lot of fun like show tune pieces and make it like a World War I story or something else. I don't know. And that's the point, is we would actually think about it. We would actually put all of these ideas into the furnace and see what comes out the other side. But you have like this whole writing council, apparently. Like, you know, Disney loves putting out these big things like, oh, we have Kathleen Kennedy and all the fabulous Wollmine writers. It's like, well, what are they doing? Like, where was Kathleen Kennedy guiding like an overarching plot line of the new series, which is what I thought the whole point of her was as Lucasfilm. It's like, if you were just having JJ like fuck around, then just let JJ do it. I don't think JJ can do it, to be honest, but it's like, find someone who can do it. It's not that hard. It's just the fact that the actual system, the studio system, is this rotten, diseased mess, but it only continues on the way it is because that's where all the money is. That's where all the venture capital funding flows into. So every once in a while, you get a really good movie that gets like privately funded one way or another, you know, like your Sky Captain World of Tomorrow, or controversial, but like Passion of the Christ or stuff like that. That's like sort of outside of the walls of Sunset Boulevard, and it's just frustrating. I mean, that's with a lot of things. It's you got to get your way into the gate, and then, you know, you got to join the guild. You can't make movies unless you're part of our special club and you pay us our special dues and whatnot. And it's like, there was a day and age where that stuff didn't matter, where it's like, okay, we need to make sure that, you know, little kid actors aren't dying on set from working 20 hours and being dosed up with cocaine. Like, yes, that would be great if, like, the Screen Actors Guild were doing that. Or, hey, what if the Screen Actors Guild were making it so that women didn't have to, like, suck off a bunch of really disgusting producers in order to get movie roles? Maybe that's something that, like, a guild could do to, like, you know, make an industry worthwhile. Otherwise, why do they exist? What the fuck is the point? Or it's like the writer's strike with the Writers Guild. It's like, okay, great. It's like, where were the studios then going out and saying, okay, the Writers Guild won't work with us anymore, let's open it up. If you got a script, you got a screenplay, we'll be a little like fast and loose. Submit your ideas. Let's see what comes of it. Because I very much think that if they actually looked, there would be a whole host of people sitting right outside that gate, sitting right outside that entrance to, to special Hollywood that could have generated some really interesting movies and TV shows and ideas if they would have at least like had a little bit gambled on them. I guess I could go to the biggest stereotype, which is, of course, Firefly. It's like if Fox Television didn't fuck up Firefly by airing it out of order and dropping the original pilot and all this other stuff, and maybe people could have jammed into the series and understood what it was and really like connected to it. Now, would it have lasted like forever? I don't think so, to be honest. Science fiction is so hard to get right on television. It's a chaotic business, any kind of sci-fi fantasy, to be honest. And the key is to be affordable. So it's like, you have your Buffy the Vampire Slayer because Buffy was a whole lot more, affordable than some of those other shows. Because then you have shows like Terra Nova, which I liked, or like Revolution, which I also liked, but they were expensive. And even when Revolution got a second season, then they ran into the new problem of, oh fuck, they actually continued our show. We have no idea what to write now. And so then you have Revolution Season 2, which just got so meandery and weird, and I stopped paying attention. So it's unfortunate. But, this is what happens when you have big art, I guess I would call it. Like, you have big business and venture capital combined with artistic visions and directions. It's like, sometimes you do get your artistic direction. Sometimes you get your 2001: A Space Odyssey. But then other times you get your Tartakovsky's Dune, D-U-N-E. And it doesn't sell. It doesn't take off. Even after they sold, the admittedly kind of creepy artwork of H.R. Geiger to the masses through Alien, it's still... Oh, I think that's how that happened, was Geiger... The Dune movie went tits up, or, whatever other bodily paraphernalia that Geiger was drawing into monsters. It went Geiger monsters up, and so then he was, like, free or available to get snatched up for Alien 1, the original. And I think that's how that happened, actually. And then they brought him again for Species. They're like, okay, do Alien, but give it tits, give us Species, which... It was kind of like a cult hit, but it also had like this kind of sci-fi channel quality to it. You know how you do the only way you can do science fiction on TV is by making it a secondary genre, essentially. So, think of Star Trek. Star Trek is essentially a drama, a character drama, and then also has some science stuff. They can talk about science stuff. But the thing is, that how Star Trek was able to stay on TV is it was also like... you didn't have like 2001 tier like production design and development. You weren't creating your super flat planar like magic whatever cinematography. It was relatively inexpensive. I don't know how much it was compared to other television at the time, but it's like you've got a bunch of people just talking on a flight deck, and then every once in a while you have like a model of a ship outside or something. It's sort of the same logic of all like the 1950s B movies. And the reason they were called B movies is because they were also written in such a way that it would be affordable, where you had essentially a lot of scientists and government type characters talking in a room and wondering about a threat, and then they change space and they talk in a different room and talk about the thing in a different way, or after some 1 minute scene happens that like changes. The ultimate example of said movie is the original The Day the Earth Stood Still. If you ever watched that with like, with the, what was his name? Gort or whatever. The dude is like in this just cheap metal suit, walking down from the saucer, and then he just stands there in the middle of the National Mall. And that's like the eponymous science fiction 50s B movie. So the point of all this, so in modern science fiction, you know, we're way past Star Trek and even Star Trek Next Generation. You have to pair it with something else. So my ultimate example of that is X-Files. X-Files started out as more or less a cop show. Like, you know, we can use the term Monster of the Week because that, you know, it's what people were familiar with. Some of the earliest successful science fiction was Twilight Zone, where every episode was its own little self-contained short story, and then you had the wonderful eccentric writing of Rod Serling guiding the light. And essentially that's that's what you need, especially when science fiction in general is a very strong guiding light. So what did X-Files have, and I guess still technically has, is Chris Carter. Without Chris Carter, you don't have 10 seasons of X-Files and a recontinuation and the movies and the giant, like, cultural phenomenon that still goes on to this day. It's like X-Files was like the true successor of Twilight Zone in terms of like science fiction, like cultural touchstone of that kind of thing. Anyway, so that's my point. And even the pseudo X-Files, which we go back to J.J. Abrams, is Fringe, the TV show Fringe, which again was kind of the X-File. Essentially, it was running off of the proven method of the X-Files, which is sort of Monster of the Week cop show, but then you have the sci-fi elements, and you had, you know, you also had decent bankrolling from JJ's own studio, which was the bad robot, whatever. So it's interesting, and it is sad that more science fiction can't survive in that medium, but now we're actually in a good age where now it's evolving along with TV, where there are more spaces for science fiction to live and grow. So you have, even though I didn't personally care for it, you have like the Altered Carbons of Netflix, and you have the Westworlds of HBO, and things like that. There are now viable mediums for a real rich science fiction or fantasy story to live and grow. And there's definitely more fantasies than science fiction, but that's Game of Thrones. So very trailblazing in its own ways. So I'm very hopeful for the future in that sense. Or even shows like Alternate History, which is kind of in the same running, like Man in the High Castle in Amazon Studios, which is interesting and fun. Oh yeah, there you go. Lord of the Rings movies. That was also an adaptation from books, obviously. A very devoted, very, you know, beloved fan base. Now, I didn't grow up as a Lord of the Rings person. I've only read the first book, Fellowship, but I don't know, as far as like adaptations go, it seems like Lord of the Rings fans complain the least about their on-screen adaptation of the story material. I know there had been a couple before, like there were the animated movies of like the 70s or whatever, but I mean, I don't think they can complain too much because Peter Jackson, he put his heart and soul into those movies, and it shows. You know, they're incredible and they stand the test of time. I'm actually right now discussing with a group of friends from college about we're going to have our Lord of the Rings movie marathon, or we actually might make it like a series, like once a week. We're all going to come together on a Saturday and watch the full extended Blu-ray and have our, you know, freaking, you know, big dinner and all that good stuff. So it's that, yeah, the last thing like Lord of the Rings I can think of really striking iron would probably be, this might be a weird comparison, but it would probably be The Hunger Games, because it's a relatively new IP in terms of the book series itself, but they were able to like bring it on screen in such a way that like they had good directors and decent enough cinematography, and it felt like it really got like the core essence of the story like up there for people to appreciate. So you had you know, you had the goofy Katniss and all that, and myself, you know, I never read the books or anything, but when I started watching the movies, I was into it. Although I have to admit, part of it is probably because who did the music? What's his name? Is it James Newton Howard, I think? I'm a junkie for his music. It has a certain, like, really, really interesting, like, quality to it that I do just love. But That's like, the most original. You know what? I'm going to back up my claim that it was very much a touchstone in the sense that look at all the movies after the Hunger Games that were essentially called like, oh, this is trying to be the next Hunger Games. So you had the Allegiant and Divergent series, and then you had the Maze Runner series, and then you had, it's not necessarily the same, but you had The Giver, and I actually read The Giver for a college class, which was the one guy or girl who's allowed to have the memories of the past and like why they're living in this like soulless like non-emotion society. They're the one that's allowed to feel, and the movie actually did a really good job too of getting that point across. They did sort of the Wizard of Oz thing where it starts out in a very, very nice like high contrast black and white, and then very slow. This was good too. It wasn't just a fast like, okay, now we're in Technicolor. Very slowly they started adding in the color. So it's like the first time fudge, is it I think it's a boy character as the main protagonist, I think. As soon as they like start tasting, they stop eating the apple, which is full that was it. Instead of taking their daily drugs, they were dosing up their apple and then throwing the apple away. So every day they go through the routine of their little, emotionless suburbia, very much like Equilibrium. They you see another color spectrum appear. So, especially someone who does like video editing, you notice like, oh look, they're bringing back up the red on the filter bar, or the color bar. They brought up the red a little bit, and then the next one they brought it up a little more, and then the next one they bring it up the green a little bit, and little by little until finally everything is full color and they're fully like feeling and emoting and have the memories and everything. It was actually very good. Anyway, the point was when The Giver came out, the movie with all them, and it was again called, oh, this is similar to blah blah blah, The Hunger Games. It's just like how the Legion and Divergent. This is like the new Hunger Games, or the Maze Runners, which I actually enjoy the Maze movies. Oh, it's the new Hunger Games. And of course, all these were their own book series, and I think some of them were written before the Hunger Games series was, which that must sting the authors just a little bit. But the point was that the Hunger Games essentially like created its own small like, what was it described to me once is the young adult dystopia. It created a short-lived genre like bubble of like young adult dystopia for movies, and I think it's just about run its course. I think all those movies are done with now for each of their respective series, but that was a thing for like a whole decade. You had all these movies running off of the hype of the Hunger Games, much in the same way a lot of superhero movies were compared to The Dark Knight in terms of trying to be more adult, or trying to be more dark, or trying to be this. And of course, everyone had their own opinion of what more adult, or more dark, or more realistic was. So you had some people who loved The Winter Soldier, like me, and then you had some people which really loved Man of Steel, like not me, and each of them thought that was a much truer similarity to The Dark Knight than what The Dark Knight itself is. And I think the only thing that killed The Dark Knight essentially was the Guardians of the Galaxy, and now everything's starting to be more and more like Guardians of the Galaxy, which I'm not fond of either. Like there's the new Thor movie, which was very it was very divisive. I personally did not like Thor Ragnarok. I thought they went too silly. They didn't do 80s enough. Like, if you wanted to go full 80s, bring in Carpenter Brute or Perturbator for the soundtrack. Don't do, like, pissy, like, kind of occasional synth stuff, and then you still have your, like, candy-colored, like, Dr. Seuss alien, like, landscape of Garbage Planet, run by, Ian Malcolm. But it's like, everything was only half-assed, and that's what I didn't like about it. Is everything about the movie felt like, oh, just add in a little bit more of this and a little bit more of this. It was like someone who's cooking for the first time, and they're like, oh, we're going to add a few more spices because we're a professional chef. So they add in a little bit too much thyme, a little bit too much oregano, a little bit too much paprika, a little bit too much basil. So then all of a sudden you have all these strong, just too much flavors added to things, and it's too much. Give me a second. I'm gonna change the air. You can still hear me. Still hear me, you guys. Hello? Can you hear me? You can still hear me. Okay. See, my problem is my computer room is sort of the back of the house, and especially in the wintertime, the main way I cool the house down is just crack the door. You open the slider a little bit, let some coolness in, or rather, you let some heat out, thermodynamics 101, and then if I do want to heat things up, I'm lucky I live in a natural gas area, so I just crank on that nat gas faux fireplace and warm things up. Because gas is cheap right now here, and that's not going to last, so I'm taking advantage of it for, as many years as it does last. Alright, back to the chat. Let's see what everyone's talking about. I can't believe how long this has gone on. It's total bullshit. What do you think, chat? Post-bathroom break conversation, much better than pre-bathroom break conversation, right? How about a sci-fi show where the humans are vassal state to anthropomorphic furries? That would be, I feel like you're referencing something, but I'm not picking up on what specifically it is. What it did remind me, though, is of another sci-fi TV show that they tried to bring it back, but it was, again, too expensive, was V, as in the Aliens V. The one from the 70s, that series, I actually saw a long time ago when I was growing up, and that was fun in its own ways, where, underneath their skin, they're lizard people. And, that's like, it's like a conspiracy theory hallmark. Like, how many people does Alex Jones think are secretly lizard people? That's great. That's given us a whole new generation of memes and conspiracy culture. But then they try to relaunch it, and, they pull the prostitute from Firefly, what's her name, and she was, she's hot. That's a great start for TV show, is put a really hot chick in like a domineering position. But it was not the same. It was not as good, especially in those days. I felt like the original V came out right after Watergate, so you had there was a very big cultural point of like distrust of the government and like being lied to on a grand scale by, a group of people that should be your kindly leaders. And so that was like, and it was post-Vietnam War. So it very much like you had all those proper emotions and hallmarks come across in the art, in the writing. But here, it wasn't so much. Like, people are trying to recapture that with like the post-Desert War bullshit, which it kind of has a point, but it's kind of manifesting in a different way in our society, so it wasn't a 1-1 comparison. There was no place to go with that. So the show just kind of burned out. They also didn't like really do the alien thing too well. I actually thought a more interesting show was the Spielberg bankrolled one, which was Falling Skies, where it's the alien race invades and wins, and then the humans who are still like scampering around, there's a secondary aliens that they use to like infect the humans and convert them, where they put these centipedes on their back, and they like, jerry-rig their spinal cord and, control their minds, and then they start like integrating into the people and turning them into some kind of like alien hybrid thing. Kind of like District 9 in that way. I thought, that was interesting, but that was a show that, again, was kind of expensive, so it went through like 2 or 3 permutations on different networks, and it did come to a close, but I didn't like catch the transition after the second permutation, so I have no idea where the story went. It was also a bit meandering too, to be honest. It kind of had the Walking Dead problem of like, okay, what's the central driving force of the story now? It's like, maybe you should figure that out first, Okay, back to the chat. The guy who played Gandalf quoted the book to change lines in the movie several times. That's great. I like that. That what's his name was holding Peter Jackson to the his feet to the fire to keep it as original as he could. I liked the Giver books more than the movie. The movie felt like was pound into dope. Yeah, probably. I mean, I read the one book just for that class, and I read it, quote unquote, in the way of, like, you know, you go through like Spark Notes and stuff. But it was just as its own, I guess. I judged it. It was all right. Is clearly not all right enough to have any more movies, though, so that's why it's just the one, rather than the Allegiance and the Maze Runners, where they actually produce, like, all of the series, more or less. What do you think of a zombie movie based in medieval times? It's funny you mentioned that. I actually did see that Pride and Prejudice and Zombies was last year, or whatever. I thought that was kind of interesting. It's not medieval, you know, like... it's Victorian era, but I thought that was kind of fun. I like the idea of these these other civilizations coming into contact with, like, extraterrestrials. Like, you know, you see that a lot in, like, really early sci-fi too, like where all the alien stuff is like Martians. Or another unfortunate movie adaptation, which was John Carpenter of Mars, which then just got changed to John Carter. And it was just a mess. Like, you couldn't keep track of the names, and it's like they tried really hard to keep track of the plot line, but it was way too big for a movie. And the names of the creatures were kind of goofy because it's like turn of the century, like world building and nerdiness. And it's like a whole series. There were like 15 John Carter Princess of Mars books, and yeah, so it was a bit hard to keep track of, but I did respect it in a way. It was an interesting movie, and you could tell there was a lot of, like, art and creativity and passion that went into it. And it also introduced me to the Peter Gabriel song, the "My Body Is a Cage," which is kind of fun now. I listened to that quite a bit. I still have Unprofessional on. Let's go back to Orgasm. There we go. Okay, so, yeah, so zombie movie in medieval times. Yeah, I like the idea, especially because in those days, then you can go off of them thinking, you know, it's demons and whatnot. I mean, I think that's kind of like that, I don't think it'd be called anachronism, but, like, that's kind of what they were going for with things like, what was it called? Not Monsters versus Aliens. The Cowboys versus Aliens. Which was... It was just goofy. I don't know if that was an original idea or like a book thing, but they didn't pull it off. Like, they just didn't make it work where, like, you know, it was like the early Darwinianism was coming across, so they had all the, like, the religious guy versus the science guy plot line, and them trying to describe who these, like, sky demons were who are mining for the gold, and then you know, you had the little alien blaster, which was cool, but it was a lot of kind of neat things that they kind of were thinking about, but that they didn't really pull them together, in my opinion. So that's something that could have been better. But the yeah, zombies in a medieval setting, just going off of that directly, that would be neat. I mean, especially if it was like Walking Dead, where as soon as they died, they came back. It'd be very much like you could have a whole plot line where they're like trying to reach like the local, like, cathedral, like, you know, maybe have them be like some, like, kind of remote community, and they have to get their way to, like, you know, the Grand Cathedral of whatever, which is, like, you know, 80 miles away on, like, you know, rolling European hills. And so then you have purpose. You have the journey of they're trying to get there, and this whole time they're trying to outrun zombies. And more of the zombies start coming in from other little villages as they're trying to get to the big castle, cathedral, keep in you know, some big town somewhere, Warsaw, whatever. That could be kind of neat. I like the idea of that. Like, you know, them trying a few, like, medieval, like, kind of blessings or, like, other things to try to stop them, and just kind of figuring out, like, one by one, like, okay, we got to hit them in the head, and things like that. It's very Very interesting stuff. Maybe they obviously try fire, and fire does pretty well. Maybe they discover something that, like, they could put in the canonicity of the universe that works too. Sort of like a garlic with vampires thing. What if they tried, what would be a good example of this? Like salt. But what if it weren't salt? What if it were like iron or bronze or something, where they stabbed the zombies and it's like started reacting negatively, like it was getting like heavy metal poisoning or something, is slowing it down, where then it forms like a sort of like a mythical idea, like, oh, you know, only or silver, you know, with werewolves, that kind of thing. That might be kind of cool. Like someone like generating a whole new mythology like that. Oh, yeah, you should probably trademark that. Humans are vassal state anthropomorphic furies, furries. I guess that sort of ends up becoming animorphs, right? Where you're the anamorphin aliens, and you got to protect the people from the bug aliens. God, I remember all those freaking Animorph books just from the covers. Those were everywhere growing up on all the Scholastic bookshelves and stuff, where you just have, you know, the same guy who photoshops all the creatures turning from a little kid into like a bug or into an owl or into whatever. And then you had the blue alien guy in a couple of the covers. So oh gosh, some of those old kid series, those were great. I actually didn't read the Animorphs. I just remember the covers, and I had a loose understanding of them from the popularity at the time. Well, I gotta say, I am actually starting to run my voice out here. I had to do some phone calls earlier in the day, so I have gone through quite a bit of talking. So if there are any last questions or anything you guys want to ask for this little SkyBored Again, bring them up now, because probably the next time they let me do a solo thing won't be for like another month or so. Who knows? Oh, could you believe how long we went with the damn Valentine's Day podcast? We were really lucky we were able to get Dusty Cat on. So if you didn't watch that and you're just coming into it like, you know, wanted to check it out maybe after the fact, just skip most of it. Go to the end, like, I think an hour before the end or something, where we bring Dusty Cat on. And that's like an interesting conversation. And they talk about like, damn it, I almost said unyielding again. They talk about untypical and all that stuff again. So that's kind of cool. Okay, if there are no questions, then thank you guys very much, and I will talk to you all later. It's a whole bunch of good stuff coming over the year, and we will see these to the end, no matter what. All right, love you guys. Talk to you later. Bye bye.